Hey guys, I want to thank y'all for coming to our free seminar that we do every other Friday night right here at Lake Fork Marina. We got another one. It is the end of September. We just got a few more days left, huh?
Yeah, but it's still hot.
It's still hot. I got my man, my ace in the hole, my number one.
Hold on, let me get out of this chair.
Sorry, son of a gun that I'm hanging around with.
Where's he coming from?
Yeah, I've probably seen Zach on plenty of videos. Obviously, with the Fish Life series that he's kind of hosting now, you've probably seen him if you watched the channel, the YouTube channel. But we've never had him up here to do an instructional. And Zach's not a guide; he's a weekend fisherman. But he has a certain technique that we're going to get into in a minute. That out of everybody I know, he's the very best at it. So he's going to talk about that tonight. Before we get started with that, we always want to show you guys how much we appreciate you any way we can. We ended up ordering some extras, because we sold a bunch right off the bat, and then we ordered more, and now we got extras. So we're going to give away some Big Perm Smash Tech t-shirts. And in fact, I think we're just going to go ahead and give everybody one.
Give everybody one?
Just going to give everybody one. Everybody, we got a size that'll fit you. We're going to go ahead and give away
let's do one little trivia question first to see who B-Law's biggest fan is.
Okay, go.
All right. Who fished with Billy on his very first ever video? Anybody?
Has anybody even seen the first video that's like 3 years old now or something?
It was a long time ago.
Well, he's here. If that helps you. Is this guy. This guy right here in the very first video. Yeah. In fact, did y'all see the music video that we did earlier this year? Did anybody see the music video we did earlier this year?
Yeah.
Old Town Road parody.
Yeah. Y'all saw that? Okay, so at the very end of that video, it said "from the very beginning." And then it was Zach catching a fish and me landing it. That was from the very first video on the channel. That's what the point of that deal at the end was.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, old B-Law and Zito have been kicking it. So he's been around a lot. He puts up with a lot of crap for me, that's for sure. I see we got a young man back there. You're probably going to need a small. Here you go, bud.
Hey, Mardi Gras, baby.
I saw the Wacky.
Appreciate you watching the content. And spreading the word, tell your friends about what we're doing. If you got some friends that are into bass fishing or whatever, let them know what we do on the YouTube channel and send them to us. We appreciate you guys doing that as well. So it's all about building a community where we kind of do what we think is right? We try to help each other as much as we can. Try to love our fellow man and help each other catch more and bigger fish. It's kind of the best way that I know how to do it, because I'm not really very good at much else. Sometimes I'm not very good at that either.
Yeah, sometimes everything's challenging in life,
You're about to get thrown out of that chair.
I'm just saying. Hey, we all struggle.
We fixing to chase a squirrel, but you know what's not challenging? It's fantasy football.
No, it ain't challenging.
Not when he's in your league, I can tell you that. Anyway, sorry, I had to fire one little shot. He's very upset with me about fantasy football this week because I crawfished on the trade deal. He's mad at me. Oh. You want to talk about it, have a therapy session?
Next.
Okay, let's go on fishing. All right. He's like, there's kids here. We can't go into this. All right, so this being the time of year it is, and I'm going to get more into kind of current patterns and do a little bit more of an open Q&A for you guys about what's going on right now. So if you're going to go fish Lake Fork or any of the lakes around here right now, I'm going to do kind of a more open form Q&A after Zach's done. But brief kind of description, there's a lot of transitioning fish, a lot. The water temps are dropping down into the lower halves of the 80s. I saw 81 degree water this morning. The highest I saw all day today was 85 out here on Lake Fork. When you got 81 degree water in the morning time, kind of when we get into the 70s, that's kind of when you really think of, man, it's the fall bites getting going real good. Well, guys, that's 2 degrees away. That's really, really close. I think we just are having cooler nights or something, because it doesn't feel like the water temp should be dropping when you go outside right now or here lately, but yet they are. So what that has done is really kind of counterintuitive, because you feel the heat, but the fish aren't feeling that heat, and the fish are kind of doing their thing. The bait is really, if you get into some of these stop sign areas, I like to call them, and even in the backs of some of the creeks, the little bait is piled in unbelievable numbers in the backs of some of these creeks. And some of the bigger bait you can find grouped up the same way in some of these transition areas. Little transition pockets going down through a main creek. You find just a little nook, in a creek, and you pull in there, and there's just gobs and gobs of shad as far as you can see, and big shad. So anytime you got that, the bass are going to be following right with them. They're going to be there And they're not easy to catch because they're spread out. These bass are spread out. There's some already back in the back. There's some hanging around the main lake. There's some kind of in between. They're really spread out. And what I found was a week ago, and for a couple weeks before that, if you guys have watched the content on the YouTube channel, you've probably seen I was out here on Lake Fork catching some really nice fish. We were catching them pretty darn good. I mean, we were catching 20-something pound bags basically every day we went out with guide trips and on filming days. And they were really consistent. They were really kind of in a certain area, and I could kind of target them and really narrow that down and pin them down and go to work on them. Well, this week has been different. I've caught plenty of fish. I'm struggling to catch fish of any size, and I'm really, some of the areas that I had them pinned down in, these fish are not there anymore. We go through there in an area where I was going through maybe a little corner's got some grass in it. I've been going in there every day. We're catching 5 to 10 fish out of that area depending on the day. Well, now I go in there, we'll catch nothing or 1 or 2. Well, finally snapped and said, you know what? I'm just missing something. They're not here. If they're not biting, they're not here. Because if they were there with the bait, they would be biting. So I just looked at my customers and I said, hey, y'all better tune up your reel hands because we're going into KVD mode. We're fixing to cover some ground. And I literally just took off down the bank. And we're just till we get a bite, and then we would stop. And I never did find a group. What I found was those fish that were in that gathering area at that stop sign had started moving back in that creek, but as they did, they spread out. So you just got to cover this whole big area and get one here, one there, one here, one there. That makes fishing tough when fish get spread out. You have to capitalize on every bite. You have to be very efficient. You have to cover a lot of ground. You have to make sure that you don't leave any fish behind. You have to catch every fish you can in those areas that you're in. And I think that's why this technique is so important this time of year. And it always is. Every year when you get to this transition time, weightless plastics are very important. And the best one every year in, year out for me, is a Wacky rigged worm. Whether it be a stick bait, a trick worm, whatever. A lot of times this time of year it's a stick bait. In the springtime it's a trick worm. But it can be either or on any given day. So I encourage you to experiment with both. And Zach's going to talk to you more about that. But Zach is, we call him Wacky Watts affectionately because it just happens to be a W just like his name. But ever since I met this guy, it was kind of a running joke because we would go fishing and no matter what depth or what cover or where we were fishing, he was going to throw a Wacky worm. Like if we're in 20 foot of water, I'll just put the whole nail weight in the head instead of half of it. And then I'll throw it in 20 foot of water. And he really, what I noticed about Zach a long time ago was we can all probably go out and catch some fish on a Wacky worm. You know, especially in springtime or something like that. We can all go throw a Wacky worm and catch fish. But how many here think that Wacky worm is kind of more of a small fish bait? Raise your hand if you think it is. Y'all don't, nobody thinks that?
They're different than most of the population.
Most people think of a Wacky worm as, okay, you're going to catch, you know, some more smaller fish. And that's true. You do catch a lot more smaller fish. But what I noticed about Zach a long time ago was being in the same boat with him, throwing the same exact rig as he is, everything set up the same. And it didn't matter whether I was in a boat with him or we were fishing a day and he had some, and I was in my boat and he was in his, and he had somebody else in his boat with him. He always managed to catch bigger fish on the Wacky worm than anybody else I know. Like, I've literally witnessed multiple double-digit fish come in the boat from this guy on a Wacky worm. And we don't fish together that much.
Not anymore, no.
It's pretty crazy in the amount of time that we spent together on the water, the size of fish that I've seen him catch on this Wacky worm. So he has it figured out. And he doesn't know this. I've never even told him this. So you can close your ears. We ain't going to fit that big head out the door. But years ago, when I started noticing how he would catch these bigger fish, I would kind of put him on the trolling motor and get behind him, and I would watch. And I'd watch everything about what he did. How long he let the bait sink. How he worked it when he twisted. There was a subtle difference in the way he was switching it and the way I was switching it. How many times he twisted it before he reeled it back in. How long did it fall in between. Like all these little details. I started paying real close attention to everything he did. And lo and behold, I started catching a lot bigger fish on a Wacky worm than I was used to. So he has some stuff figured out. There's a lot of knowledge in his head about this technique especially because he is just, he may not be a full-time fisherman, but he's fished a Wacky worm as much as anybody has. I can promise you that. So that being said, you better follow that up really well because that's a big introduction. So you better have some.
That was a huge introduction.
You better drop some knowledge, man.
Hey, B-Law, thanks for letting me come out and talk today about the wacky worm. Now, first thing I like to go over is a couple of misconceptions with the wacky worm. First one we already went over is that
I'm long-winded. I apologize for that. I forgot one thing. The deal with this right now. So I want you guys to be thinking about this as you're listening to him. Right now, when you have to cover all that water, as soon as you find 1 or 2 bites, the way to make sure that you leave no fish behind is this. That's the whole reason we're talking about this tonight. Because this is the way, when these fish get spread out and it gets tough, that you get the leg up on everybody else. Because you're going to catch every fish in there that they're going to miss. So go. Sorry.
Right. So the couple of misconceptions in wacky worm fishing. One we've already covered tonight is that it only catches small fish. Billy's seen it. You guys have seen it a couple times on the channel. I've caught multiple double-digit bass on a wacky worm. The other biggest misconception is that you have to throw a wacky worm on light tackle, spinning rig, 6-foot pole, medium pole, whatever. I've never ever thrown a wacky rig on a
spinning rod,
a spin cast.
Ever. You don't even know what it's called. It's a crappie rod.
Crappie rod. Yeah, I've got a couple of sac-a-lay poles. I'm gonna use them tonight, but I've always thrown it on a bait caster. I've been fishing a wacky worm for over 20 years. I learned it from my boy Charlie McKenzie down there on Toledo Bend, Matt's daddy-in-law.
Yeah.
So Charlie, if you're watching, shout out, bub. A lot of people overthink wacky worm fishing. They kind of shy away from it because of the misconceptions we talked about, that it only catches small fish and then that it's hard to fish and hard to throw. It's really not.
Hard to throw it in the wind. Yeah.
Well, it is hard to throw it in the wind. You just got to practice. You got to learn how to underflip it, and keep it a foot off the water out there. You'll be more successful. But I throw a wacky worm on a 7'4" medium action 6 cents sensory rod. We got a couple of them here. These aren't mine. These are Billy's. It's just one thing about casting a wacky worm out there is I see a lot of people get in trouble because they'll actually, get that wacky worm 6 inches off the end of their pole and they'll try to, whip it out there. All right, well, that's going to work about once or twice, and then on that third whip, that wacky worm going this way, your hook ain't gonna go but about a foot, and your reel is going, get as big as a offshore reel. I mean, that's gonna happen. So, what I like to do with a wacky worm is, oh, you twisting up, sucker boy. You always do this. Rather than having it here and whipping it, you could hear that right there. Okay, and I could feel that thump, man. It's really putting a lot of pressure on the middle of that worm. Now we've only got this hook, and I'll talk about the hooks and the lines and the weights here in just a second, but you got to remember now, we've only got that hook halfway through, at that little piece of plastic right there. That worm's only halfway through there, so it's very important to try to take care of that worm. Now, I've caught 4 or 5 fish on a wacky worm before without having to change, but how I like to cast it is, I really can't explain it. It's almost like a tight line cast, right? So
I've had to teach customers this, so I may be a little more attentive explaining it because I've had to try to explain it to people a bunch of times.
Yeah.
First thing you want to do is make sure the worm is not, let me see this pole real quick. Make sure the worm is not too close to the rod tip. So you don't want it right here. You want to let, some line out like this. That's going to help you. I'm going to back up so I can show the folks at home. You don't want to do it real tight like this. You want to let that thing have some slack hanging when you cast it. Okay, that's going to help you get some more whip without having to put all that snap into it. Like you can kind of lob it, and that'll naturally give it more momentum. The other part is to extend your arm more. Long arm it. Like if you're a baseball player and you're going to turn 2, you're going to throw it like this. But if you're throwing from the outfield, you're going to reach way back and come over the top and make an extended throw. This is kind of the same thing. We normally bass fishing, if we've got a crankbait or whatever, we'll take it, whip that sucker out there, right? Well, in this case, you want to go ahead and reach your arm out a little more and give it a little bit more of a long arm lob cast. And then as you get more comfortable with it, you'll be able to take it and go this way too. But if you notice, even when I go this way to keep it low, or if I go this way to keep it low, my arm it's extended, right? I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, I'm not flicking my wrist, I'm not snapping my rod. Guys, when you take the bottom of your rod and you hold it in one spot and you flip that rod, that is so much speed and so much whip. You're putting so much pressure on that worm, it's going to tear that worm out.
Yeah, we do have some chairs over here. You know, the more you use a wacky worm, and depending on what kind of wacky worm you use, and we'll talk about that in just a second. You know, you can flip a wacky worm, you can pitch a wacky worm, you can skip a wacky worm up under a dock. You know, you don't have to just bow up and cast it out 50, 60 foot.
Well, in fact, that's kind of, and I know I've heard you say this, you don't want to.
Right.
You know, you're not fishing this on the heaviest action rod. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just what Billy brought me right into it.
It's like we spend a lot of time together.
You would think. So I don't try to throw the wacky worm as far as I can every time unless I'm fishing 20 foot of water and I know that bait's going to swim halfway back to me. That's when I'll try to get it way out there. But if I'm flipping stumps or if I'm fishing less than 10 foot, I rarely make more than a 30 or 40 foot cast because I want to have the backbone when I'm setting the hook. If that wacky worm's 60, 70 feet out there and you try to set a hook with a medium action rod, which is what I use now, if you can certainly use a medium heavy, it all depends on the rod maker and the rod brand.
And I will tell, on the Century, those ones that you're showing them, those are medium heavies. And the deal with the Century series is that rod is so light that it makes it easier to throw light baits on a heavier action, on a stiffer rod. So I can, being out here with the big fish and the heavy cover, I want as much power as I can have. So I do throw a medium heavy rod on the wacky worm. I know you do medium though.
Right. Well, that all depends on the rod brand and the rod maker, right? So some brands, medium heavy is going to act like a medium action, or it's going to act true like a medium heavy, or it's going to act like a heavy action, like the old Abu Garcia poles, those white poles. I used to have one and it was medium heavy. Man, it was more stiff than my 7 foot frog rod. You know, but it said medium heavy. So just play around with your rod, see which one works best for you. And like I said, multiple applications, multiple ways to fish it. You can cast it out, you can flip it, skip it. You know, when you're just starting out with a wacky worm, it's probably best if you're going to try to flip bushes or flip stumps is to have a Senko style bait because of the weight difference. It's a little bit heavier. But if you're fishing open water and you're targeting stumps and edges of docks, or you want to skip, Zoom trick worm will be the ticket. Now, this is my go-to right here. It's just a simple Zoom, the original trick worm. Okay, I'm always going to have some sort of green tied on, whether it be and that be either watermelon, green pumpkin. Very occasionally, if the fish tell me to, I'll throw what's that? God darn, I got brain fart. June bug. You know, a dark purple and green flake. If it's a real dark overcast, if it's feeding a storm, or if it's right before dark.
But I'll fish with you in some pretty, this is especially for our brand new California import. Welcome to the greatest country on earth, Texas. Well, he was just talking to me before the seminar about, you know, man, this is different. The water's a lot dirtier, a lot shallower. We fish some really dirty water with watermelon seed or watermelon gold, or just a watermelon colored trick worm in like muddy water.
Yeah.
And they bite it.
If I'm fishing dirty water or if it's a thick overcast, I'm always going to have either green pumpkin, straight watermelon seed, no flakes, or a June bug. Again, if the fish tell me to throw June bug, that's kind of a last resort for me. Or if I'm fishing at night, I'll throw a June bug up under a light, right? But 99% of the time, I've got some sort of variation of watermelon color, and 99% of that 99%, it's going to be this watermelon candy red. Watermelon candy red. That's just my go-to. My other go-to, and I looked, I'm out of them. No, not honestly, not the, well, it was the Magic. The Magic does real
Watermelon
good
Magic
in clear water. It does really, really, really good in clear water. Athens, Broken Bow, man, the Magic would be great there. But Mardi Gras, the purple gold flake, man, I have been wearing them out.
Can we chase a color squirrel? What is it? Gold flake. There's something to gold flake. Have you noticed that?
Yes, yes. On Toledo, I'm throwing watermelon gold, just straight watermelon gold.
Well, even out here, I kind of learned that with you on Toledo about the gold flake, but I've brought that here, and in fact, I had some custom stick baits poured up for me a couple years back, and watermelon red's a great color around here. We all know that. But I had to make watermelon red and add gold flake it, and I'm telling you, it was lights out. Like
I don't know
something to gold flake.
What he called that color, but I remember we were fishing that day.
That was the B-Law special.
I grabbed a 32-gallon sack, garbage sack of those things out of your boat, and I still got plenty. So
What? What? Hold on, hey, I've been out for a minute, son.
Well, I don't know where you can find some. I bet you he'd make you some.
I bet you'll make me a fantasy football trade for some, won't you?
That's right. You no good sucker. So again, just a normal trick worm. Now, I want to show you how I'm rigging this trick worm, and that brings me into the hook that I use.
You need it back?
No, I got it right here. The hook that I use is the Gamakatsu weedless wide gap finesse. Okay, right there. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the difference. Okay, but this package on the top says 1. Other packages on the top will say 1 off.
Let's pull the hooks out. Let's look at
okay.
Science experiment right here, right now.
I've put them side by side and I can't hardly tell the difference. All right. I think it has to do with the thickness of the hook.
That's 100% what it is. Oh, the aught has a heavier gauge wire.
Okay. So I always throw the number 1, and there's only one reason I always throw the number 1. Is that when you get this wacky worm, when you stick this hook through this worm, and on a zoom trick worm, you're gonna have like a little smooth area right here. I always go, and then you'll have ribs all the way down the back. I always go 3 ribs back from the fat part.
I think most people hook it in that little egg sac part.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, I think that's one of the deals. Remember I told you guys earlier, he just catches bigger fish than other people. I think one of the things is him hooking it further back gives the worm a fuller and more aggressive action when he's shaking it or pulling it up. It folds the worm more in half and gives it more, other than just the tail kind of float behind it with the head hanging off here.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I actually lied to you. It's about 4 or 5 ribs down where I poke it. Honestly, I just eyeball it. I try to get right in the middle of the worm. And I always, if I'm holding the hook like this, I always have the flat part of the worm, you know, facing down like that. Now
you said that you hook it in the middle, right?
Dead center.
Like you try to go right through the center of the worm. That's halfway. Right. Okay. So you remember how we were talking about whipping it and it getting thrown off? Well, when you're a guide and you have customers, I love each and every one of you, but not all of you are blessed with the gift of listening very well. And so something that I have done now is I'll actually hook it very, very skinny on the outside. I try to get the bulk of the meat of the worm on the inside of the bend, so instead of going right through the middle of it, I'll take it and come down here
for the pressure,
and I get it as close to that outside edge as I can. Okay, and then this little weed guard that stays on here is going to keep it from turning over to the skinny side. Because if it turned over and we threw it with the skinny side in the hook, then it would tear immediately. But with this weed guard, as long as that weed guard stays attached, the fatter part of the worm will stay there, and every time you cast or pull on the worm or pull it out of grass, it's pulling on the fat side of the worm of the hook. The fatter part that... I've been fishing too much this week. I can't even talk. Y'all know what I'm saying, right? You got more meat inside the hook bend, so you got more meat to pull against.
That's right. So, back to the reason why I throw the number 1s, okay? Just the number 1s, not the 1/0. Is because when I get this worm on this hook, I take this weed guard and I just mash it down till I almost hear a click right there, and it pops down behind the barb, okay, which holds it in place. Let me show you guys that. So I put it on there. I can't hardly see. I need some glasses. I still can't do it.
You want me to do that?
No.
You need somebody without so much gray in their beard to do that?
I got a hand. So see, it's barely on the top now, so I just push it down until it clicks behind the barb. What I found is that is that when I was throwing the 1/0s, every time I throw it out there and I'd hit one blade of grass or I'd hit one stick or whatever, it'd get back and my hook would look like this right here. That guard would be up So I was constantly having to do this. Well, just by luck one day I grabbed number ones and I never had that problem with them. And I don't know why. I don't know the rhyme or reason. I don't know if the weed guard is just a hair bit longer or if the barbs are a hair bit.
I can tell you that this weed guard is thinner than that weed guard.
It may be, but I've never had a trouble getting hung up in grass, wood, pad stalks, passed in, nothing with this number one hook. And that's the Gamakatsu finesse wide gap weedless hook. Now another thing I do to my wacky worms is, there they are, I use these Lunker City nail weights right here. And I always use the smallest ones they sell, which is a 3/64 ounce. All right. I don't even go up to the bigger ones if I'm throwing Cincos. I stick with these nonstop. Now the reason I like these is because I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but this is it's ribbed. It's kind of rigid right there. So that serves two purposes. One, when you shove it in the head of the worm, those ridges grab and it won't let it pop out. I was gonna be cheap one day and I just cut the heads off a bunch of old little penny nails and put them in there, and I'd cast 3 times, that nail would be gone. So these things really do a good job at holding the weight in the head of the worm. Another reason why I like these Lunker Cities is they are very easy to manipulate. You simply bend it and it breaks in half just like that. Okay. Now, when I'm fishing a wacky worm, I always break the nail weight in half before I put it in the head of the worm. Now the reason being is because it tends to fall a little bit slower. It gives it more of a natural action when you are actually down there popping it. You know, if you have the whole nail weight in there, it's basically going to work like that. But with the half a nail weight in there, it keeps its natural presentation, if you will. Now, if I'm fishing deeper than 12 to 15 foot of water, I will use the whole nail weight just to help the bait get down. I don't know if you guys watched the three lake challenge video about a month and a half ago, but I caught a good 5-pound fish off of Hobart in 18, 19 foot of water on a wacky worm, but I had the whole nail weight in there. Speaking of fishing a wacky worm in deep water, well, let me talk about fishing in shallow first.
Talk about the way this thing's rigged up real quick before we move on. And this is a point of emphasis for me personally. Some of you will have heard this before. If you look at how this is rigged up, we've got a weedless hook. We've got a weight in the head. This is what everybody is so crazy about, and they all call it a Nico rig. This is essentially a super light finesse version of what everybody freaks out about calling it a Nico rig. A Nico rig is a wacky rig worm with a hook in the middle with a screw-in weight in the head. It's a heavier, bulkier, less finesse version of this. This is a better version of the new invention. It's been around forever.
So B-Law won't ever let me get to where I was going.
The Nico rig makes me so mad.
I was just finna talk about that.
It's like we spend a lot of time together.
You would think. Good Lord. So, listen, I'm not a Nico hater. If you guys want to throw Nico rigs, that's fine. Me personally, I will never throw a Nico rig simply because... I think there's a purpose
to the Nico rig having that bigger weight where you can kind of keep it on the bottom, and it's almost like a wacky rig shaky head in a way.
So, again, something else I was going to say, but you got right on to it. No. So, yeah.
Sit down, Billy.
Yeah, in my opinion, okay,
you kids got an iPad I can borrow?
The reason why I don't throw the Nico rig is because, one, this is exactly how the worm comes out of the package. You can't tell any different. You can't tell there's a weight in the head. So basically, I'm not adding any profile to the bait right here. It is exactly how it come out of the package. This to me looks like a worm you'd see in a lake or on the edge of a lake or in a ditch or something like that. The Nico rig, again, it's a screw-in head that you screw into the head, and there's a weight on the bottom. To me, that adds profile to the bait. And if you're going to do that, why not just throw a light, shaky head? I mean, really.
I think the only advantage of the Nico rig is it is a shaky head that's wacky rigged. So you get, when you move it, you get that folding worm presentation of a wacky worm, but with a heavier weight to kind of anchor you on the bottom like a shaky head. So I'm not saying there's not a time and place for a Nico rig. I just think this is better.
Here's my problem with that. What he just said is that with the Nico rig, you got that big weight on the head, and it, you work it and it goes down to the bottom. And what you want is that worm to stay up there as long as possible. But this hook it does have very little bit of weight. It's going to pull it down like this. So again, if I was going to throw that application with a bulkier head on it, I would want the shaky head to keep my worm standing straight up. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
But a regular shaky head will do that.
Right, exactly. So anyway, again, I'm not a Nico rig hater. If you want to throw it, that's fine. I prefer the little Lunker City nail weights. And again, yeah, I hate it. No, but again, if I would recommend, if you're fishing less than 12 foot of water, break your weight in half, cut it in how many cuts with a pair of scissors, or you just saw me snap it right there, just super easy. If you're fishing 12, 15, even 20 foot deep, I'd go with the whole weight, only for the purpose of helping it get down to the bottom. Now, a lot of times when he does get down to the bottom and you finally pick up on it and you're ready to work it, your line will be over here. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
You want to talk about the O-ring versus no O-ring? We get asked that.